Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's Friday again, and we're here with the Legacy Change Maker broadcast that celebrates, connects, and inspires change makers to further work and contribute to a more peaceful, prosperous, hopeful, and people and planet-centered world. As you know, we usually follow the inspiration, which means the person who spoke last Friday is going to appoint the person who is going to speak this Friday. However, this was not possible. So I took the liberty to invite a very special person. Her name is Masa Gong. She is an executive and organizational coach with a 20 years experience in leadership and people people development. Out of those 20 years, 12 she has worked at Google. And what inspires me most about Masa is that she's brave. She's really willing to step into a unknown, to redefine and to recreate her careers. So let me tell you a little bit about Masa Gong. In addition to what you know, Masa Gong is on a mission, which is called Global Peace, one coach, one leader at a time. And in addition to that, she's working in the context of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Recently, she launched a course that is helping the coaching professionals, the coaching industry out there have more meaningful conversation around diversity, inclusion, and equity. But more than that, to take more meaningful action. So unfortunately, Masa is not going to be live with us today because of the time difference. However, you can still post your questions and comments, and we will make sure that Masa will answer them. You will find the answers on our website. So let's dive in. The conversation with Masa Gong on life rewards positive action. It's so good to have you with us.
Hi, Biliana. Kisses from New York. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us. And thank you so much for being willing to share your wisdom and your mantra with us, which is life rewards positive action.
Yeah, life rewards positive action. Thanks for inviting me.
It is a pleasure. So let's dive in. Why are you doing what you're doing? Can you please tell us?
Oh, long story. Let me try and keep it as simple as possible. So I am currently an executive and team coach here in New York, and I work with organizational leaders around the world, and specifically women leaders and leaders of color, to help them overcome disempowering beliefs because of society, family of origin, their own mental models, so that they can show up powerfully and authentically in work and in life. And this mission, this work, this domain that I operate in today is important to me because it's my story. It's my personal journey as a professional, but also inspired from my family of origin. So I was raised by a single mother here in New York City, a single mom that was raising 6 kids in New York City on her own. So I come from a really big family. And she's an immigrant. We're first generation. And she didn't have a lot of options, obviously, because raising 6 kids is a lot of work, but also had a very traditional conservative mindset because of our culture. So she didn't have a lot of choices, and there was a lot of unhappiness, pessimism, oftentimes hatred, resentment, negativity, in our environment. So the work that I do in because of my own growth, my own experience and development, is to help others break down those walls, barriers, and mental ceilings so that they can be everything that they were born to be.
This sounds very special. This really sounds very special. But in addition to working with individuals, I also know that you work with organizations.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit, what kind of change are you bringing to those organizations?
Yeah, and it's so timely. And I'll answer the question sort of backwards with some news that I got this morning, which was so rewarding and just made my day. I've been working with a startup organization for over a year now, 500-person startup. And as I mentioned, I have a focus and background in diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was the focus of my graduate thesis, et cetera, a lot of research in the space. And a few months ago, I brought some of my work in diversity, equity, inclusion to design an experience for them, a new experience around understanding unconscious bias, what are the best practices around creating an inclusive workplace and inclusive environment. Cut to 6-7 months later this morning, I got news and they shared with me their entire diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, supported by their C-suite, their organizational leaders. And it's this multiple work streams, multi-pronged strategy across country, across departments. And of course, they're including a measurement strategy to track progress. And the my point of contact, the owner of it, mentioned, thanks to you. And I congratulated them. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of detail, a lot of momentum. Congratulations on the commitment. And they said, Masa, thank you. It was because of you and your work with us many months ago that inspired this and gave us the courage to make these commitments and to to create this strategy. And that's the ROI. That's my reward. And I sometimes don't see it instantly, and that's okay. But I know that as long as I'm standing in my truth, doing what I'm called to do, the vibration, the words, the energy that I'm putting out there is making a difference. And today I got that news, delayed ROI, but equally as powerful.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. For those of you out there who do not know what ROI is, it is return on investment, right, Masa?
Yeah, it's the impact, it's the results, it's the change that you hope for, aspire to, work towards, but try not to get attached to, because life, world, people are in different places. And yeah, and I, and it's incredibly gratifying. 500-person organization across country, languages, communities. So I'm just thinking about the multiplication effect, the ripple effect of that work. Just because I, spent a few hours doing some consultation and design work. So that's an example of what can happen at scale. It may not be visible, you may not know it immediately, but trusting that what you do is still an intervention, is still a contribution, it's still affecting others. In the universe, it's sending that vibration.
Great. You also told me that recently you have launched a course. It is in the same line of work. Can you tell us a little bit about the course, please?
Thank you. So it's a 2-hour workshop entitled "Okay, Speak Up, Coaching in Racial Equity." And this is a representation of the research that I've been doing in the last 16 months, part of which I mentioned is, my thesis for my graduate education. And as I mentioned, I am, an executive coach. I'm also a coaching supervisor. This is my domain. This is the field that I operate in. And I'm joining multiple passions to try and drive change in the industry. A couple of reasons why. Coaching in itself, professional coaching, is surging worldwide because of the pandemic, because it's become more normalized in organizations, and it's becoming more available beyond the C-suite. That that individuals who are not in the executive ranks are also seeking out, professional coaching, and a lot of companies in the industries are driving this change. However, because of the events of 2020, the murder of George Floyd, the global protests demanding more racial equality, social equality, the Me Too movement, certainly, addressing equality underwrites 5 out of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, COVID-19 has revealed tons of inequality in health, education, access, etc. That specifically in my domain, the coaching industry remains predominantly exclusive to organizational leaders, and also itself remains a predominantly white field. So you've got this sort of chain reaction where you have a pretty homogenous field coaching and supporting another pretty homogenous field, organizational leaders. My research uncovered that potentially coaches are not talking about racial justice, racial equality, race, social justice with these powerful clients that could actually drive system change at scale. So 2-hour course, OK Speak Up, is to help coaches build skill, those that are committed to using their practice to help drive system change, to engage in those conversations, those courageous, brave, sometimes difficult conversations with their clients, to offer them the skills and the psychology and the practice to name, face, confront, challenge, talk about race, racial equality, social justice with their clientele. So again, another drop, my contribution, hopefully in the movement, hopefully in the larger roaring river, to make this world more equitable, egalitarian, and more peaceful and loving, frankly. So this is my new venture, and check it out. And I hope you'll tell a friend, and other coaches will sign up, and also leaders that coach. So it's also a management practice, not just a profession.
Thank you so much for sharing all this good news with us. This is really exciting, a new venture and a new adventure, not only for you, but maybe for some of our people, the people who are watching us today.
Thank you.
You've already shared a big success that you've heard of today. Now, can you please share with us something that is not yet working?
Not yet working. Yeah, I think it's personal. I truly believe that global peace, a thriving life, developing your calling is an inside job, right? That the work that you do to know thyself, love thyself, surround yourself with an uplifting, positive environment, starts with your inner work. And there's still a lot of work to be done with my family of origin, wanting to really understand and deepen intergenerational trauma, intergenerational habits, cultural habits that have been passed down. I am a loving aunt to 12 nieces and nephews, so there's a new generation already here. And I bring this up because I'm 46, and only recently have I started to uncover some, ancestral work, doing some family history, understanding what happened to Hong Kong during World War II, which is where my family is from. And my mother was alive then as a young girl, as well as my maternal grandmother. And for whatever reason, I never knew the history, the specific history. And certainly in my family, like many others, they didn't talk about it. It was taboo. You kind of left the past with the past. But as I'm diving into that period in time in Hong Kong, I'm uncovering so much trauma. And, I think in parallel, thinking about the pandemic and COVID-19 and this lost year for all of the young people and all of the people around the world, we're going through this shared global trauma. So I'm making the connections on, what that experience must have been like for my grandmother and my mother, and what vibrations and what habits and what fears and anxieties they developed that to this day might be showing up, or were less consciously passed down, to us and future generations. So learning more about that in service of me, my roots, who I am, where I come from, my habits, in order to be that much better of a coach, that much more understanding of a human being, so that I can, reverse the tide, stop intergenerational trauma, focus more on adding peace into the world and love rather than violence, strife, resentment, judgment, hate, or anger. So, that's giving you a sense of the more that I can heal, the more that I can know my family tree, my family chain. I think that is my part in adding to the greater global peace movement, this universe, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense, especially having said that global peace is an inside work. We have to start on the inside. We have to start with us.
It starts with, and I work with so many clients that, have such negative bias towards themselves, such really cruel inner critics, including myself, right? The inner judger, feeling, not good enough, flawed, broken, defective. And this is a consequence of experiences, the world, the messages of society, which is all noise, frankly. It's all made up, right? Messages from their religion, their country, their family of origin, workplaces, right? Social comparison, their peer network, their friend circle. And the more that we can address our inner war, the outer war, the external wars, and all of their various faces and manifestations will decrease. And this is, the basic tenet of Buddhism, which I'm reemerging and studying a lot more. I studied a lot of religion, giving you a little bit, another thread. I studied a lot of religion in my education, and my grandmother was a devout Buddhist. An aunt is a monk, and the wisdom traditions figured it out, as well as Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, civil rights icons. They figured out that, love is the most excellent way. The path of peace, the path of non-judgment, non-violence is the most excellent way, which is loving all beings, starting with yourself with self-love, but all beings because they belong in this world, whether you are white, black, brown, indigenous, Asian, the animal kingdom, of course, nature. We're all a part of this universe, and we're all, intimately connected, living in symbiosis with each other. So what we put out is what we get back.
What we put out is what we get back. I heard you. So, given the fact that our chat is really focusing on how life reward positive actions, where would you advise those young people, and maybe not so young people, but the people who are listening to us, where would you advise them to start, and what next step should they take?
I have so much empathy for young people today because the pressure is just so enormous to succeed, right? Student loan debt is so high. All of the data points to so much more anxiety and depression. They've gone through pandemic, right? They've gone through the 2008 recession, wars and terrorism and school shootings. My goodness. So fear is real, and it might sound easy for me to say, but it is based on my experience and based on the research to do what you can to take smart risks, right? Try things out. It's not about finding your calling, as Angela Duckworth, author of Grit, says, and a scholar I truly respect a lot. It's about developing your calling. Try things out. Don't be afraid to experiment. Say yes to new things, just to learn and to build knowledge about yourself, how you learn, what you like, dislike, your strengths, what gives you energy, what doesn't give you energy. And it's sort of that trial and error that will help you figure out A, yourself, and B, the space you want to occupy for a thriving, happy life. And guess what? That might be 10 careers. And I'm a testament to that. When I was young, I made a commitment that I want to have at least 10 careers in my life, because why not? The world is so big. There's so many interesting things to learn out there. Why limit myself to one, career? And so far I'm up to 9. And the common denominator is you. right? They all synthesize and will make sense, just like it did for me in my 40s through coaching and helping others and human psychology. So when I say life rewards positive action, that's about taking risk, building your resilience, not living in fear, because fear is the old brain, is a negativity bias that we all have. It's not the brain that took you to college. It's not the brain that's going to help you make, you know, balanced decisions. So notice when you are living in fear versus living in, thinking about your, critical thinking, reasoning, perspective. So life rewards positive action is about, taking those leaps, taking those small steps, and building your resilience to overcome and grow from those adventures. And some of them, it'll be zigzaggedy, and some of them, may be less effective and not add value. But 10 times out of 10, you're going to learn something about yourself that you're going to take forward. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you so much. You mentioned developing your calling. You're inviting people to develop your calling. Can you briefly tell us, how did you develop your calling? And when did you find your calling or stumble upon it?
Oh my goodness. I'm laughing because of the heartburn I probably gave my mom so often growing up, because I was definitely not your traditional, Asian daughter. I was very much nonconformist. I did musical theater in high school, speech and debate. When I went to college, I was totally lost and didn't know what I wanted to do. And it wasn't, I wasn't called to being a doctor or a lawyer. I wanted to be an actor, but that didn't seem financially, logical. So I studied medieval history. I studied Spanish. Spanish was a passion for 10 years. I did, study abroad, and I was the first person in my family to go to Europe. So definitely, took the road less traveled, was scared, and often felt lonely because I was the first and the only one doing it. But it made sense for me. I think, my inner spirit was stronger, and maybe that was my grandmother's energy and DNA, because she was always so confident and loving and unconditional in her love to us, that I felt brave enough to seek that adventure. The path became one. I tried being a lawyer. I was going to be a nurse. I fell into advertising, and I fell into tech. I joined Google, was with Google for over 12 years in 2 different phases. And that put me on a path to, finding coaching, finding human psychology, where I worked, in international settings. I traveled around the world, which I realized I love. I love the diversity and the study of cultures, mine included, Spanish included, cultures from the Middle Ages as well as modern times. As a historian, I realize, and that's connected to my genealogy work, I need to understand roots, the provenance, how things arrived to today. That's part of being a coach, right? The human psychology, what built the fear, what built the bias, what built this belief system, and how can we deconstruct it? How can we find those blind spots, those assumptions, and bust them? And that's at the individual level, the personal level, but also at the organizational and societal level. So my calling, wah-wah, didn't become clear until I was about 39 or 40. But it was hard won, and it was built and is a synthesis of all those previous experiences. So the message here for you listening is follow your nose, trust yourself. Again, take more risks, go out there, because the common denominator is you, and it might feel fragmented, but it's going to integrate. Trust yourself.
Thank you so much. And thank you for revealing so much of yourself and what you did and what you didn't do so well. That's really, I appreciate it a lot. I also hope everybody who's listening is going to appreciate it. So if you are being a coach working with organizations and with startups in the context of the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, what would your call to action be to make this world a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more prosperous, and of course, people and planet-centered?
Yeah. So first step is know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that? Look at your family of origin. Look at the people who cut your hair, who do your taxes. Look at your community, your friend circle. What do they look like? Is it homogenous? Is it diverse? What are the beliefs that they hold? What are the biases they hold? What are the stories that you tell yourself about what profession you're supposed to be in? What is good or evil or right or wrong? And really know what your fears are, your biases are, and as a starting point. And that includes negativity bias. If you have certain, less conscious beliefs about your self-worth, your self-esteem, etc., really know yourself. Start there. Step 2 is get out of that comfort zone and meet different people who are not like you, who don't look like you. For me, I'm trying to understand more of the Republican point of view here in the Americas, understand more conservative viewpoints, what that looks like, what is their mindset, reading books, meeting new people, getting out of your comfort zone, challenging yourself, educate yourself, about different cultures, stories, nations, languages, because that's going to give you a window and add to the tapestry that is the world, and hopefully have you build more perspective and empathy about folks that are different. The third thing is talk about perspective, maybe, and there's a lot of open source material around this, around, what are the human biases, the common biases that show up. I see a lot of negativity bias, that the world is going to end. We call it catastrophizing. If something happens, if you speak up, if you make that choice, and hopefully you hear how distorted that is, and how it makes the world small and live in fear. And as I mentioned, part of this is rooted in my positive psychology education. Reframe it. What is the positive, opposite of that fear? What might be the upside of making that decision or taking that risk? So check your biases. If there's catastrophizing, mind reading, fortune telling, negativity bias, and know that it's a bias for a reason, and try and counteract it with a reframe, looking for evidence. Again, not using the fear brain, but the executive function, the brain that took you to college, or what you're doing now, etc. And also use your social connections, talk with others about it, get wider perspective. And as I mentioned, earlier, take more risks, smaller steps. And that's not saying, I'm not saying, put yourself in physical danger, right? Make, at nighttime out in the world. No. I'm talking about mental risk, learning, work experiences, project experiences, new skills, etc.
Great. So you've summarized 3 amazing call to actions. Thank you very much, Masa. It has been a real pleasure chatting with you.
It's been my pleasure and delight. Thank you for inviting me and having me.
And keep on being a change maker. Keep rocking your world and keep rocking the world of others. We all need it.
Likewise, and likewise to everybody listening and watching. We all have the power, in small ways. It doesn't have to be big ways.
Yes. So, dear people, life rewards positive action. And this was Masa Gong. Thank you.